after 70 years. That's what he goes there for, is to unlock the door. While those around him criticize and sleep. Through a fractal on a breaking wall, I see you, my friend, and touch your face again. Miracles will happen as we dream.
And good morning, everyone. Thanks for making it on this week's podcast here Friday morning here in the Phoenix area. My name is John Gormally. I am marketing coordinator for Coeus Consulting based in Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for making time on this beautiful Valentine's Day weekend. We are expecting a little bit of rain forecast today in the Tucson area, but I expect the rest of the year will be nice and sunny and very cold for those listening here on the East Coast today as well. Well, before we get started today, as you can tell by the title, we are talking about how to stop romantic scams from taking your heart. Now, obviously, this is something that has been around for a lot of years. It is not uncommon for someone to say, oh, yeah, I met this guy or I met this girl and they, we sort of got together and, suddenly he needed a few bucks and they needed some more and then he needed my car and then he needed to move in. And then suddenly I'm hustled out of a bunch of money, all because he said he loved me or she loved me or they loved me or somebody loved me. But the moral here is that a lot of the early signs and early warnings of these types of behaviors are very, very easy to detect. So we're going to focus a little bit this morning on talking on both the digital side and on what I call the social engineering side as well. Now, obviously in the age of artificial intelligence that everybody has been seeing and reading and talking about, for almost like, Nimium today, AI has a very big role in scams. So the first thing that really is, comes to mind is how people meet. The example, you get an email from somebody who claims to be a long lost friend or a relative you don't remember, or somebody from a church or somebody from somewhere in your past that says, hey, I know it's been a while. Great to see you again. And then you sort of have to scratch your head and go, well, how exactly did he know how to find me? And often or not, people or hackers and scammers will serve people's Facebooks, LinkedIn profiles, Instagram profiles, and they sort of pick up little nuggets about you, or they simply just do a Google search of you. They see that you recently graduated from college, or you've taken a new job, or you have posted something online and they read it and they liked it and they commented it, and then they friend you, and the whole social chain begins to start. At that point, that's when most people, realize that, well, why is this person reaching out to me? I have no interest. But that's really kind of how it starts. Now, the second part of understanding that now in an AI perspective is now when someone says, yeah, let's do a video, let's do some FaceTime, or we'll do a Facebook video or something. And they come up on video and you look at the person goes, that person is very handsome or very beautiful. I must have fallen to a lucky star. Someone finds me attractive, all the things that happen in life. But then you sort of get a little sense of, is this person really who this person really is? Now, before we take the romantic angle to this, let's take it more on the business angle side. It was discovered recently in 2025 that a lot of North Korean, infiltrators or imposters were using AI video rendering in order to fake out the people that they were interviewing with. And many of them, believe it or not, actually got jobs in tech companies in the United States by impersonating and utilizing basically not only, video rendering, but also doing clone voice AI as well, where they can actually tell AI generate a voice of an American, Southern accent from Texas, between the ages of 25 and 40, and it can render, the ability for that to use as an overlay voice capability as well. So if you're on video with someone, let's say you've gone from someone's done a warm introduction to you, you've exchanged emails, you've kind of used messaging applications, like FaceTime and others to kind of text back and forth. And you say, let's meet. I want to see you on video. So you come up on video, you look at the person, and you kind of look at them, and they look at you, and they're smiling, and they're charming, but then you get a sense something isn't right. Well, go with your gut. Most chances are there's something wrong. Now, how you break or how you detect AI fake video is simply ask the person on the other end, turn your head that way for me. And by turning the head and bringing it back the other way, breaks the AI rendering fake. So this basically eliminates the person's, quote, AI overlay look that they have on the camera. That's really the first sign that you know that this is something wrong. Obviously, the first thing you want to do is immediately disconnect, block the person across email, block the person on social media, and just be aware and be cognizantly aware. Now, the second part that's really very important as well is when you get into clone voice as well. This is another area, especially any voice calls. And you get a suspicion that, okay, this guy sounds like American, he sounds like he's Canadian, sounds like he's Mexican, or sounds like he's got a very deep European accent. And you suspect, is this person really in Eastern Europe, or is this person really in California, or is this some scammer somewhere in Nigeria? Learn to ask a few questions. Example, someone says, yeah, it was really great to catch up with you after all these years. Hey, you remember in high school when the mascot caught fire during a basketball game? Oh, yeah. Click. A, there was no mascot, and B, there was no fire. So kind of do a little bit of that type of capability when you're on voice calls with somebody. So, ask them questions out of the ordinary, like, what is the color of George Washington's white horse? Little, tidbit, little things like that. Or pull out your favorite cards from Trivial Pursuit, right? How many home runs did Babe Ruth hit, right? Little things like that tends to throw out people that are not from the United States, that are not from here. That doesn't mean that people and scammers don't exist in the United States. They do very much. But most scammers that people get robbed from, especially ones that are really pros, are usually people that are overseas as well. Now, the third element you want to keep track of is when you're going through this kind of, romanticism type of scamming, environment, is when somebody now takes the angle of what we call pig butchering. Now, pig butchering sounds a little disgusting, and it actually really is in real life. But in the romantic cyber world of things, it basically is where someone basically contacts somebody and end the conversation to say, by the way, can you use a few bucks? I mean, are you in a good place, or are you struggling? And you're probably like, how does this guy know that, I'm having financial trouble? So that's we'll take that up in another conversation. But the person says, yeah, I've got an angle on something. You interested? Yeah, I've been doing Bitcoin. I've made some money on some cyber and some crypto and things like that, and put in some money to my IPOs, and I'm kind of doing good. I'm kind of got my own car. I just bought a Porsche, and I just moved up to Scottsdale or something. And some people will go, well, can you how does it work? I don't know. This is where the scammer kind of lures the person into a financial transaction or crypto financial transaction. It says, okay, here's how you do it. You and I are going to set up an account. Yeah, I'm going to put $5,000 in. You put $5,000 in, and we're going to put it into some form of cryptocurrency, and then we're going to let it sit for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then at that point, then we can be able to withdraw the money and make our profits. What do you say? And it gives us something to do. Maybe this is a good way we get to know each other a little bit more if we kind of do things like that, right? So people that do that, they put the money into an account, they transfer it, they see it, they witness it, they go back the next day, and suddenly it's all gone. And they realize that the person that they were trying to have this relationship with just scammed them out of $5,000 of their money. So it's something where people are not familiar with crypto. They're not familiar with how Bitcoin works. They're not familiar on how the asset works. They're intrigued. They read the press. Bitcoin's trading at 60,000 right now. People who's bought it at 1,000. They're making tons of money. So people get lured by that. Romantic scammers do the exact same thing as well, right? Now, the last area, that kind of comes to mind before we get into kind of more the physical security side of this, is when people go into, as I mentioned earlier, they go into your Facebook, they go into your LinkedIn, they do their research, they do their homework. They see where you went to school, where you worked. They look at people that that they may reference, as a common thing. Oh, he knows Mary. Maybe I can mention I know Mary too, or something along that line. And this is where you really have to make a decision of how much digital footprint you really want to put out there. People are constantly talking about, well, I want to meet somebody. So you put your profile up on Tinder, you put your profile up on Facebook, all the different social media sites, was it plentyoffish.com and all the others, eHarmony. You're putting yourself out there, right? So you're doing that because you want to meet somebody. At the same time, you realize that that's basically a fertile ground for scammers to try to identify their targets. So you have to decide upon how much you're going to put out there. The less that you put out there, the less people will actually have the ability to know. So this is something very important that you have to decide upon: is how do you limit your digital footprint? Like an example, there's a lot of people that are locking down their LinkedIn profiles, and they're only extending visibility to after they've approved the person has been basically, yes, I will go ahead and open my profile to you. Very, 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 very smart move. extremely smart move. So I would highly recommend that when you think about your Facebook profiles, your LinkedIn profiles, and so on, that you absolutely lock them down and basically restrict access to them so people cannot harvest information in order to identify you as well. Now, we've talked about AI video, we've talked about voice, we've talked about pig butchering, we've talked about protecting your social media. Now let's take a kind of a different angle. And last night, my girlfriend Jen and I had we did a kind of a little dry run of today's podcast, and I kind of went up to her and I said, so, I was pretending to be a stalker of some form, and I said, hey, it's Janet, Jan, something like that. And she says, yes. I said, well, now I know who your first name is. I said, hey, Maryville High School, Juneau, Alaska, maybe? Yes. Wow, great. Well, hey, Steve, you may not remember me, back in the day, whatever. But I just want to say hi. I moved in the area recently and whatever. Hey, maybe I'll see you around, right? And then Janet and Steve depart, right? 3 days later, Steve shows up at Fry's in the meat section. He runs into Janet again. Hey, remember me, Steve? Oh yeah. Nice to see you. Hey, you shop here too? Because I moved here in the area, and such. Hey, by the way, great to see you again. And maybe catch coffee sometime. He splits, Janet splits, Steve splits. A week later, you're in line at Bank of America, and Steve's 3-person behind you. Janet, what's going on, man? How you doing? Good to see you. Hey, and then he hangs out afterwards when transactions are done. Hey, you know what? There's a Starbucks right over here. You got some time? Let's go hang. And by that time, a several amount of people will go, okay, fine. Maybe it's just a coincidence. It's not. Okay. This is something that everybody needs to be aware of. This is an AirTag by Apple. Okay. Most people that are still trying to use physical contact in order to set up their scams will drop these into people's bags, in purses, they'll slide them into people's jackets. They'll even try to attach it to people's cars. So when you run into somebody who claims to, quote, know you and claims to say, hey, let's meet, but it tends to take 3, 4, 5 times in 1 week, maybe a week and a half, where you just coincidentally seem to be running into the same person, you can highly susceptible that there's a possibility this person has dropped an AirTag on you or something equivalent to an AirTag and that you're being tracked. There's devices out there and there's software out there that you can use to kind of scan your car, scan your purse. But it is a very good idea that if you feel that somebody is in fact eyeballing you, or more importantly, showing up when you least expect them to show up, this is probably a chance you think that maybe there's an AirTag on you. I do recommend, and for some women, change your purses. Take a moment, take everything out, put everything in, look for these things. Look in your car, look under, look and see if it's attached to your bumper. Maybe they slid it into, when you left your door unlocked, they put it between your seats. Take the time and kind of, look at your person and take a look and see if something like that has been tagged. That is becoming tragically one of the most dangerous things, the ability that people are using these in order to basically track their targets and looking for as well. Ultimately, when it comes down to preventing romantic scams, you have to look at it at a digital level, which we talked about. A social engineering level means protecting your digital footprint of who you are out there in the net. And third of all, physical, right? You run into people in the gym, you feel like somebody bumped you. You feel like somebody has shown up 3 times in a week when you have no reason whatsoever to think that they would even be in the same place as you. It's like men showing up in like an Ultra, in the shampoo section, and they run into you. Like, what would a man be doing in the shampoo section in Ultra, right? Little things like that, little incidents like that will tend to wake up as well. The most important thing that I would highly recommend, in closing today, is, as Johnny Depp put it, which was a very interesting statement. He says, "You do not need a Valentine to be loved. Always remember that somebody out there does love you, and that you're never alone in this world." And for those that think that they're alone and they think that, I want to meet that special person, I will promise you that at the ripe old age of 62, which I turn 62 next Wednesday, absolutely, I have met someone, and it's never too late for meet somebody. But be careful, be safe, and uppermost, I cannot begin to emphasize, have a beautiful, wonderful, romantic weekend on Valentine's Day weekend, and next week on President's Weekend as well. I wish you well. My name is John Gormally, Marketing Coordinator for Coeus Consulting, based in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for taking time on this beautiful Friday morning, and I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful weekend as well. Take care.